And that I have 20 minutes.
The senator's correct.
Thank you. I wanted to speak on 2 or 3 topics, the first of which is the statutory debt limit. We heard the Treasury Secretary today say that essentially early to late July would be the last time at which we could manipulate things to not surpass our debt limit. And I kind of wanted to ask the rhetorical question is, what does a statutory debt limit mean? What it means is we put into law a limitation on ourselves on the amount of money we can borrow. Now, President Bush, I believe my facts are correct, asked for the debt limit to be extended 7 times. This will be the second under President Obama's leadership, and it's been extended multitudes of times prior to that. And as a physician, I'm querying myself to ask the question, why do we put a limit on our debt when every time it comes up, we just raise the limit again? And the answer to that question is the limit doesn't mean anything because we continue to disregard the difficulty we're in. If a debt limit really meant something, that means we would make changes and take actions to limit the amount of money we're spending so we would not break the debt limit or have to raise the debt limit. So as a physician, when I think about the debt limit's a symptom simply of another problem. And that other problem is we in Congress, this Congress, the Congress before this, and the 10, 20 Congresses before that, have not taken seriously the idea that this country has to live within its means. And in fact, we are not living within our means. We weren't living within our means before the housing crisis of 2008. We weren't living within our means except at one short period of time when we had a true net surplus of about $36 billion thanks to the tech bubble and the fact that in 1995, the 104th Congress did a rescission package that of significant amount, under $30 billion, but the accumulated benefit of that allowed us to run those surpluses. So the question before our country today is the Congress just going to pass another debt limit? Are we just going to raise the debt limit again and not do what every other family, every other business, and every other organization in this country has to do, and in fact the rest of the world? And that is, they don't have the liberty of spending money they don't have on things they don't absolutely need. And I believe the question the American people ought to be asking of Congress and this president is, how dare you even consider raising the debt limit till you've done a thorough job of finding out whether the programs, the multitudes, hundreds of thousands of programs that we have, actually function efficiently, actually do their intended purpose, and in fact are a legitimate role for the federal government to be doing in the first place. We're always going to have the bipartisan or the partisan debate on whether taxes aren't high enough or spending isn't low enough. But all of those belie the real problem is this country can't continue to live beyond its means. And in point of fact that this Congress doesn't want to do that, we have a small business bill on the floor for which we're all tied up in knots because we really don't want to make votes that actually will cut $20 billion worth of spending this year. We don't want to have those votes, so we've had all these shenanigans to try to keep amendments that actually do something from coming to the floor. And I think the American people ought to look at us and say, what is going on? Do you not get it? Do you not understand that the country as a whole is now experiencing what a large number of our families did over the last 2 years, is that the amount coming in is less than the amount going out, and adjustments in how we spend and what we spend have to be made. We've got an ethanol amendment that I understand is controversial. And the fact is it'll be voted on after the cloture's filed on this bill. But it's an amendment that will save a true $4.9 billion this year alone, and the money for that tax credit that goes to the international and national oil companies in this country to blend ethanol with fuel, they've sent a letter and said they don't want the money. So how do you justify voting to send money, $4.9 billion, to ExxonMobil and Chevron and ConocoPhillips and all the rest of the big ones that are going to show tremendous profits with oil prices where they are today? When they say they don't want it, how do you justify continuing to sending that money to them? How do you vote against not sending that money back to the Treasury, not borrowing that money from the Chinese to pay the large oil companies to blend ethanol? It's not a justification. And so the reason we're not having a vote is because they know it will pass. That amendment will pass. That's why we're not having a vote. America ought to look at the Senate and say, you're not having a vote on something that will save America almost $5 billion this year, before the end of this year, that the people who are getting that money don't want, and have written to the Congress and said we don't want the money, and yet we're not going to be allowed to take that amendment up in regular order, and we're not going to have a vote on it because a small special interest group doesn't want that to happen. You talk about dysfunctional. Talk about having our heads in the sand. Talk about not addressing the real problem of the debt limit when we can't even do anything that simple of saving the American people $5 billion on one amendment that will save that money just like that, and we won't do it. Some real change has to happen, and not enough change has happened yet. The Government Accountability Office, Government Accounting Office, issued a report a month ago outlining massive duplication throughout our government, the first third of it, massive amounts of duplication. There's the question on the other side is, are these legitimate roles for the federal government? We're not even going to debate that. The fact is they showed massive amounts of duplication in large areas across the government in things that we have multiple programs to do the exact same thing. And so we have an amendment that will save $5 billion this year. If we'll just vote an amendment and say, let's cut $5 billion out of at least $50 to $100 billion that we know is there, and let's do it this year, and let's have the administration mandate that they have to do it. That's another $5 billion. Well, in two amendments, we will have covered everything we will have cut with the CRs. And they're common sense. They match what the American people want us to do. If we had true world bankers, they'd be telling us to do it as well. And yet, we haven't been able to achieve to get a vote on that. Then we have the fact that we have unemployed millionaires to the tune of taking, I believe, the number's $20 million in unemployment checks. People earning $1 million a year taking $20 million from the taxpayers of this country for unemployment. We should not let that go on 1 second longer. Unemployment is for people who desperately need it. It's not for those that don't. What we've also found is a tremendous cost as we research the data on the unemployment for millionaires, that we're spending almost $5 billion a year to manage the unemployment program in this country at the federal level when 85 to 90% of the work's done at the state level. We didn't even offer that amendment to downsize that. So the question I have for my colleagues is, let's go back to the debt extension, the statutory debt limit. You know, I've of a mind, and I think the average American, regardless of what the consequences are and all the fear-mongering that we hear about, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this, I don't think we should do it until we've followed some of the common sense prescriptions that the average family does in this country before we extend a debt limit. And my knowledge of the functioning of this town says it's doubtful we'll ever do that. So I would call on my colleagues to start thinking about what the real disease is in Washington. And the real disease is we don't have the courage to make the very hard choices that are in front of our country today and then live with the results of that in terms of how it's going to impact our political careers. Everybody's got a program they want to protect. Well, the message for America today is every program is going to get hit. The Defense Department's going to get hit. Every program's going to get hit. My taxes are going to go up. Sorry, they're going to go up. This country cannot get out of this mess with the behavior that we're exhibiting in this body. And if we fail to do what is necessary for our country at this critical time in our juncture, history will deem us absolutely incompetent. With that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President,